Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 84 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, I believe I introduced last week's show by saying it was episode 88. Well, that was a senior moment. Of course, it was indeed episode 83. So, yeah, it's definitely episode 84. Did a double check. And last week, of course, we spoke with Trish Buchan of Scotland. And we were discussing the situation in the run-up to the Scottish elections, where the SNP are refusing to categorically state one way or the other whether they are pro or anti-unconventional gas exploitation. In reality, what is occurring right now is the conditioning of the people. Nicola Sturgeon is alluding to the observation that she's not convinced that, fracking is going to be permitted in Scotland. In reality, she knows for sure that once the SNP win the expected majority in the forthcoming Holyrood elections on May the 7th of this year, then probably by September, Nicola will have lifted the moratorium on unconventional gas exploitation right across the central belt of Scotland. So I must confess, I really feel for the people of Scotland right now, because most of you are still of the opinion that the only hope for another referendum for independence is the SNP. In reality, as I discussed last week on Humanity versus Insanity with Mel Kelly, the reality is that the SNP, in the guise of Mr. and Mrs. Sturgeon, know very well that the only way in which they hold on to power is the referendum carrot at the end of a very long stick. Indeed, Nicola Sturgeon herself made the observation in the run-up to the last referendum that the IndyRef was a once-in-a-generation opportunity, thereby giving the observation that basically it's not going to happen for another 20, 25 years. And that will enable the SNP, or so they believe, to maintain their political supremacy and effectively establish the one-party state. Now, please do watch the episode of Humanity versus Insanity with Mel Kelly. We discussed a number of issues, not least, of course, the named person scheme, where every child, indeed every fetus in Scotland from August of this year, will have a named state guardian, reducing parental rights quite significantly. So it's not just the fracking issue in Scotland, it's a lot more than that. And hopefully sanity will prevail and the SNP won't get the massive majority that they are anticipating in May. Because if they do, not only is every child going to have a named guardian by August, but by September, I would anticipate that Jim Ratcliffe and his team at INEOS will be given the green light to start exploratory drilling right across the central belt of Scotland. And in last week's episode, we also had Helen Bender, who was speaking from the heart because she lost her father in October last year after 10 years of fighting the unconventional gas industry in southern Queensland. He decided that enough was enough, and unfortunately, he took his own life. This is very much a matter of life and death. And the reality is that if the unconventional gas industry does get a foothold across the central belt of Scotland, where some 80% of the population of Scotland happen to reside, the end result, unfortunately, is not pretty. And of course, people should also take a look at the recent events in Porter Ranch, California, where a few episodes ago, I unfortunately predicted that although the all clear had been given and Southern California Gas had announced that they had capped the leaking well and that people were given the green light to return to their homes, I said this is basically a disaster waiting to happen, because unless all the houses were totally cleaned, all the soft furnishings, the carpets, the clothes that had been left in closets were cleaned, then the symptoms would very quickly return, and sadly they have. And already, basically, it's exactly the same symptoms as were occurring when the gas leak first manifested back in October last year. So, it is an insanity. It's a total insanity. There is no rationale for this. Those who are pro-unconventional gas are sadly cognitively dissonant. They absolutely refuse to do the research, and if they do see the evidence that we try to present, it's like we put the blinkers on and they just don't want to see it. So we're in certainly an uphill battle. But right now in the UK, we have perhaps a time to get up our game in terms of fracking awareness, because the Horse Hill well site is now vacated, as is the well site in Lincolnshire at Loughton. The Quadrilla inquiry has concluded. So for a few months at least, it's unlikely that there's going to be too much activity around the UK. So this is a very real opportunity to hit the streets and make sure that people are aware, so that when it rears its ugly head later in the summer, then the numbers of people who are prepared to resist this insidious industry has increased exponentially. And just to indicate the magnitude of the absurdity of those who purport to represent this industry, we look no further than a recent event in the US, where Executive Director Corky DeMarco of West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association said that it is not God's will that West Virginians be farmers. Instead, he said, it is God's will that the natural gas industry extract all it can out of the Marcellus shale. Well, I mean, this is socio-psychopathy in the absolute extreme. In fact, in West Virginia, it's not split estate. So the farmers there, the landowners, do actually get a direct benefit from the extraction of this resource. But one of the interesting observations is that despite that, there are many West Virginian landowners who were very happy to have a few oil wells on their property. And over the years, many of them have become very wealthy from those oil wells. But there are landowners in West Virginia who rue the day that they gave permission for gas wells to be drilled on their property. The oil wells are relatively benign by comparison, whereas the gas wells have caused phenomenal contamination in a relatively short period of time. And yet the likes of Corky DeMarco say it's God's will that West Virginians not be farmers, but extract the gas. Well, once again, this is the God that we've seen elsewhere. We've heard the likes of Lloyd Blankfein of Goldman Sachs state a few years ago that Goldman Sachs and himself as the chief executive were doing God's work. We've heard Tony Blair say that he's doing God's work, and George W. Bush say he's doing God's work. Well, this is not any God of you or me. This is most likely the God of gold, oil and diamonds, which of course is the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds and the Oppenheimers. This is what we're up against. And if of course there was any doubt that this insidious industry has no place in the UK, then perhaps we should just take a look at this graph here, the graph of reality. And here we've got the overall cost of production in various countries, and the UK is actually top of the list with the production costs of 1 barrel of oil of $52.50. Now that's conventional oil. The unconventional oil has a premium of at least 50% on top of that. So, despite the fact that oil has once again reached the heady heights of $40 a barrel, at $40 a barrel, it's not a viable proposition in the UK. That's conventional oil, let alone unconventional, which is why we're seeing operators effectively wind down their operations. We're seeing massive redundancies. And obviously, the countries that can produce it much cheaper, and bottom of the list here, or top of the list if you look at it that way, is Kuwait, with a production cost of $8.50. Next is Saudi Arabia at $9.50, then Iraq at $10.70, the United Arab Emirates at $12.30, Iran at $12.60, Russia at $17.20, Algeria at $20.40. These countries have enormous resources, and the only thing that's causing instability is, of course, the aggressive hegemonic agenda of the West. If it wasn't for the West's absurd foreign policy, then there would be no risk to energy security. So it's a problem of our own making. Well, tonight we're going to change the tone of things a little. And we're going to take a break in a second, and it's going to be a little different from our usual fare. So sit back and relax, and you'll see the significance of this as we go through the program. But sit back and enjoy a little rendition of Vivaldi. Well, maybe we should do that more often to relax the tone of the programme. But that very talented young man there was Morgan Marshall, who is a resident of the Fylde Peninsula, the Blackpool area where Quadrilla have been participating in the inquiry following their appeal against Lancashire County Council's decision last year to deny them permission to drill and frack at Preston New Road and Rossiter. Well, Morgan has many talents, and Morgan brought those talents to bear at the Quadrilla inquiry. And fortunately, his presentation to Quadrilla, his 3-minute presentation, was recorded, and I want to show that in full. So have a listen to this.
Can I hear from Morgan Marshall, please?
Good evening, I'm Morgan Marshall. I live a few miles away from the proposed fracking site at Preston New Road. I want to explain why this planning application makes me fear for my health and safety, as well as that of my family, my friends, my amazing community and seaside town. I listened carefully to the planning application at County Hall as it was being live streamed. It was like being on a white knuckle roller coaster ride, and it was hard being at school. Before that day, I had no idea who Councillor Paul Hayhurst was, but now I do, and I shall never forget him. For me, it was such a relief to see someone use their position and power for good, and to hear his voice willing to stand up for us. I celebrated when finally the LCC gave Quadrilla their loud and clear no. At County Hall, a lady spoke about her concerns for vulnerable members of the community. She was upset as she remembered some really scary times when her children were suffering with asthma attacks. That was my mum. She described a toddler who had fear in his eyes and who would tug at his vest until it was too tight as he struggled to breathe. That's me. And the other boy she talked about being rushed into hospital many times was Oscar, my older brother. Councillor Paul Hayhurst spoke about P&R residents, a lady with COPD, a person with asthma, an autistic boy who has problems with light and noise, a lady who had been forced to retire from work due to a medical condition aggravated by chemicals, as well as a lady who had recently donated a kidney. These people all have names too, and they are my friends and my neighbours. Councillor Paul Hayhurst asked our Public Health Officer for assurances that our health would not be made worse if permission was given for the well to go ahead. Dr. K couldn't give assurance that Quadrilla's plans wouldn't make us sick. He told us that the science is very clear, that there is no safe limits of particulate matter. The more pollutants, the higher the likelihood of impacting on people who live in the vicinity, particularly those with respiratory conditions. It's too easy for those who hope to make money if fracking is allowed to dismiss or write off our health concerns. I guess that's why Quadrilla call us receptors, so Francis Egan doesn't even have to pretend to have a conscience or to care. I've seen others from the industry trying to look sorrowful as they announce that in the name of progress there are bound to be some winners and some losers. I just want to remind these people that we are real people here, real people who matter. We are just as valuable as anyone else, and labelling us as unfortunate victims, collateral damage, or receptors doesn't change that. I've been taught respect, to care about the planet, appreciate my environment and nature, and not to take things for granted, and to treat others as I would like to be treated myself. I've been taught that we all have a right to say no, and to have that no heard and respected. Clearly, some people don't have the same morals, and they look out for themselves regardless of the cost to others. For example, Lord Brown when he said to frack the desolate north, or Prime Minister Cameron who wants to push it on us but hasn't issued any licences in his own constituency of Witney, despite indications of large amounts of gas being there. The millions of gallons of toxic wastewater from each well poses a risk, not only to our community but further afield. We don't yet know Quadrilla's plans for storing, transporting, treating and disposing of this water from P&R, but we know that spills and leaks happen. Scientists who carried out the Marseilles shell study have now proven flowback water causes cancer. They injected mice with cells transformed from flowback water. 5 out of 6 mice developed tumours, some within 12 weeks, compared to the control group of mice that didn't develop any tumours over 6 months. Quadrulla's planning application is the biggest threat in my lifetime, to my community, health, safety and home. I'm young and I'm a musician. I don't want my head full of these worries. I want to concentrate on working towards my concerts and the practice I need to do for my assessments. I want to be able to hang out with my mates and talk about football and jazz concerts without having constant thoughts in my head about fracking fears. Quadrulla says their 6-year plan is temporary, but for me, it's the rest of my childhood. If they get their machinery onto that field, the young people of the field will grow up living in fear of pollution and environmental disaster. I would like to thank you for listening and for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to the loud and clear no that has already been given to Quadrulla's plans to frack.
Well, I think you'll agree that was an extremely moving and very well delivered presentation. And it is with great pleasure that I am able to welcome young Morgan Marshall as my guest on Fracking Nightmare tonight. Morgan, how are you doing?
Thanks, how are you?
I'm good, thanks very much. Thanks very much for joining us. And that was an excellent delivery there. Must have been a bit nerve-wracking for you, though.
Yeah, it was very nerve-wracking because Quadrulla's CEO Fancy was just opposite, so yeah, nerve-wracking.
Yeah, did you take a look up at him while you were delivering it?
Yeah, I looked at him quite a few times, yeah.
And the last time I saw him, he's not looking particularly well. He's looking like he's aged, quite significantly over the last few years.
Yeah, he always seems to look older and older.
Every time. So now you're 13. You're obviously a very accomplished musician. How long have you actually been playing the violin?
About 8 years.
Wow, you started real young. Did obviously not on a full-size violin.
No.
And what other instruments do you play?
I play on the violin, jazz violin, classical violin, and I play jazz piano as well.
Outstanding. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing talent. Unfortunately, I have zero musical talent. I'm basically tone deaf, and so I always admire those that do have the ability to play an instrument, especially that well. So, obviously, this has been perhaps a little bit of a distraction. When was the first time you realised that something wasn't quite right about Quadrulla and what they wanted to do in your area?
The first time I heard about fracking and Quadrulla, I was on the way shopping, and on the way we saw P&R, and we saw the Lancashire anti-fracking banners. So on the way back, we came and went to speak to them, because we had heard a little bit about fracking before, and they told us a little bit. We met Tina and Julie and people like that, and so we decided to stay on the camp for a while, because we all like camping as well. And then every night I'd go down to the camp, learn different things about fracking, hear different stories and things about it. And then also we wanted to show, because the media were making out that everyone who was going there was, an outsider from further afield, and actually there was a lot of local people there, including ourselves. Obviously, we welcomed any support from further afield, especially when Reclaim the Power came and helped us.
Because that became really quite a big camp, didn't it? And in fact, it ultimately led to the camp being evicted, but it had really served its purpose. Do you think it really did help in raising awareness in the local community?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we held signs at the road, so we would say, honk for support, and it was just honks going on really late into the night. We had so much support, and that camp was amazing, all those people coming. And they started off with about 3 or 4 security guards on the other field, and when they saw all them arriving, it soon got up to about 20 or something like that.
So from your perspective, that camp was really quite catalytic in terms of galvanising your conviction that you needed to do as much as you possibly could.
Yeah.
So what kind of reaction do you get from your colleagues at school or young people your own age in your home area?
Home area, yeah. There's I speak to my mates about it, and they say they research it and that, and I've had a look. But yeah, you can't really be a supporter of fracking unless you're going to make money out of it or have got shares in it, because there's nothing to be in support of about it.
But what kind of reaction do you get from your peer group? Do they agree with you, or are they not interested?
Yeah, there are quite a few agree, and then there's a few that aren't interested because it's not going to affect them. Maybe they don't live in that area. Like a lot of things, if it won't affect people, they won't care about it.
Sadly, that is the truth. But of course, in the north of England, and by the way, I'm sure you realise it by now, but it was actually Lord Howe who made the observation about the desolate northeast. In fact, what he said, first of all, on day one, he said that we should simply frack the desolate northeast, which of course upset all the people in the northeast. And then he corrected himself the following day when he said, actually, I didn't mean the desolate northeast, I meant the desolate northwest. So he basically upset pretty much everybody who lives in the north of England. But the north of England, of course, and particularly Lancashire, is under massive attack. I'm going to bring up on the screen here the pedal licence, and this is the largest single licensed area in the west of the country. So obviously we've got Blackpool right in the pretty much there in the top. Whereabouts do you live, Morgan, in that licensed area?
I live in St Anne's.
You live in St Anne's, okay. So you're just a little way to the south of Blackpool. Yeah. So not very far from Anna's Road.
No, not at all. No.
And are you aware, by the way, that back I think they've removed it now. I must confess I haven't checked for a while, but certainly nearly 3 years ago, when I was doing the Fractured Future tour around the UK, Quadrilla actually stated on their website that they were intending to drill up to 120 well sites in that licensed area. This is actually a graphic. I think it was produced by Paul Mobbs, actually. But, it was intended to sort of illustrate what 120 pads might look like if Quadrilla realised that ambition.
Yeah, and people don't realise that to get the amount of jobs that they're saying they're gonna get from fracking, you're gonna need to sacrifice a lot of natural beauty spots and everything, and all that's gonna have to go for jobs which will soon be lost when the gas companies go in and then they come out leaving destruction in.
Now it is a beautiful area, and of course, once you get out off the coastal communities, it's pretty much agricultural. And of course, I didn't watch all of the inquiry, but the bits that I did watch, rightly, much was made of the impact that it would have on the rural agricultural communities. What do you think is the greatest concern of the filed residents about this industry?
The greatest concern would be that obviously they have one backing of the government, which is scary. But again, with the
hang on, Morgan. Hang on a second. I've lost the volume. It's not us. Have you knocked something on your computer there, Morgan? All of a sudden, the volume effectively disappeared. Of course, it could be the Quadrilla hackers. Can you hear me clearly? Oh, did you knock something there because it... No, are you using the microphone on the laptop? It's an iPad. Okay, I think what we're going to have to do is we might have to try and reconnect the call. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're back. You're back.
All right. Okay.
Whatever it is that you did or didn't do, you're back with us. Excellent. Yeah. Hey, well, listen, now you've sent me through a few photographs, and I know you've been getting very active with particularly the nanas, and of course, they were very influential in, getting you interested in the subject. And this was the camp. What was that? How long ago was that? It was 18 months ago, 2 years ago? 2014, wasn't it?
The camp, yeah.
Yeah, so summer of 2014. Okay, what we got on screen here, well, why don't you talk us through what's on screen?
So David Cameron was, pushing fracking everywhere, except from in his own home constituency of Whitney. So we decided to go and show him that that's not okay. We brought a tank and Vivian Westwoods, and it started off with about 2 police officers, and then it soon got more because the police officer was radioing down the phone that they brought a tank to the house. So they had to call some backup, and that's all the nanas sat on the tank, and we went down to show him.
So I mean, there's not actually much security on his property, is there? I mean, obviously they didn't know you guys were coming along.
No, but they soon did. There was a car that came about 5 minutes, nearly knocked one of the nanas over, just full speed. Came in, so they definitely didn't want us there.
Well, I guess that when they heard there was a tank there, that probably set a few alarm bells off.
Yeah.
And you're quite right. In fact, on this programme, we've made the observation that David Cameron is actually the chairman of the most successful anti-fracking community in the country.
Yeah.
Because he actually managed to ensure that his entire constituency was not part of the licensed areas that were up for grabs in the 14th round. So that was quite a remarkable achievement, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did well.
He did well, yes. And what we got here?
That's me and Tina. Tina's been figurehead for the nanas, and always been very supportive as well.
Okay, something happened again where we were almost losing you. It was drifting away, and then it clicked back in. So there may be a loose connection or something on your... Is there on your... There you go, that sounds good again there. Okay, so that's literally you at David Cameron's back door.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he wasn't home, was he?
No, he wasn't home, though.
Yeah,
I should quickly say that I've been working with the nanas a lot as well. I go on the demos with them. I also am in the Preston New Road Action Group, and we've the group of residents who work extremely hard, as well as a lot of other anti-fracking groups, and they deserve a lot of credit as well because they've been doing a great job.
No, absolutely.
And I sent you a picture of all the files of evidence that they've been getting together and things like that.
Yes, I have that here. There we go. It's certainly a phenomenal collection. These were the files, and this is just the files that Preston New Road anti-fracking community used at the inquiry, correct?
Yeah.
So I can imagine that the inspector has a serious amount of literature to get through over the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's no question that the Lancashire groups, of which I think there's something like about 50 or so now, probably even more, and I know new ones are manifesting all the time. And I think I'm actually back up in Ramsbottom sometime during April, screening voices from the gas fields. But when we have a look at the degree of which the north of England is under attack, I mean, I don't think people in the rest of the country really quite appreciate just how much of the north of England is being targeted by this industry. I mean, with the exception of the high Pennines down the centre of the country, pretty much everything else that is in any way accessible, it has now been licensed. And of course, the focus has been on the Fylde, and in Yorkshire, the focus has been on Rathlin, on that green area there, that light green area over on the right-hand side, just north of the Humber Estuary, and Third Energy in North Yorkshire. So these are three of the most beautiful areas of the north of England: the Fylde, the Wolds and Holderness, and the North York Moors, all under attack. So what do you think that can be done, or what should be done over the coming months? Because the inspector now has to write her report. That's not going to be submitted, I think, at the earliest until probably late June, early July, if by then. So Greg Clark is probably going to be looking to make a decision either immediately before the Parliament goes into summer recess or immediately upon their return. So we're looking at things starting to kick off in September, perhaps. And then the same over in the other side of the country with Third Energy, because I know that Flamingo Land won't be very impressed if they start working there during the height of the summer season. So let's say we got about four months to utilise for raising awareness. So given the ideal situation, what would you suggest that can be done to facilitate that?
Well, like your shows are doing, is keep raising awareness is one of the big things we can be doing. Speaking to different people and just keep making them aware. I mean, awareness is the biggest thing we could be doing. But it is pretty much a waiting game now to see what they say, and supporting other anti-fracking groups so that we help them and then they can help us. And so we're not NIMBYs. We're going to help everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, by the way, we shouldn't be sort of too concerned about the use of the term NIMBY. You know, the mainstream media tries to use it as a negative. And of course, for those who aren't aware, NIMBY is the acronym for Not in My Backyard. But I mean, if that's what gets people motivated, and once people do realise that this is something that they don't want in their backyard, but neither do they want in anybody else's backyard, and the likelihood is, if it is in somebody else's backyard, it could still affect them anyway.
Yeah. But what I mean is, like, we don't want fracking, obviously, where we are, but we are 100% against it everywhere else as well. And it's important that whilst we're waiting, we can show support to all the groups.
And what can we do to get more young people involved? Because, I mean, I'm going to make a generic observation here, but I would say of the active community, probably 60% plus is female. And I think there's a very good reason for that, and that is that women seem to be able to comprehend the fundamental basic that if you screw around with our water, it tends to be somewhat life-threatening. For whatever reason, the male, especially the male that has any kind of scientific background, for some reason they seem to be able to dismiss that and say, "Well, we'll solve the problem, won't we? We'll find a way to solve it." So, fortunately, we've got a very high percentage of very aware women. But I would also make the observation that the average age of the anti-fracking community is probably, and I'm talking about average, but is certainly, I would say, above 50. So what can we do to get more young people, the younger generation, to recognise? Because, I mean, it's my generation that's screwed it up or is in the process of screwing it up. And the legacy that we leave scares me. But, it's not unstoppable, and it's certainly salvageable, but we do have to get more people involved. So how do you think we could put more effort into getting young people involved?
Well, a guy who's done a really good job of that is the actor of the Hulk, Mark Ruffalo. So the youth who are interested in the Hulk will know that he's against fracking, so hopefully that will get quite a lot of youth against it. But I think it needs to be that children and young people are taught to research more of lots of different sites and not to just get one source of information.
Yeah, and that's a great observation. Encourage young people to, or not just young people, but everybody, to do their own research, because I've often said that the one thing you'll never hear the government or the industry say is, don't take my word for it, go away and do your own research. You will never ever hear them say that. They will lower their voice, they will speak in sort of deep gravitas tones and expect you to simply take their word for it. Whereas, of course, we don't need to do that, and we shouldn't do that. We should simply encourage people to do their research.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I am heartened because on last Saturday, Easter Saturday, I was invited to participate in an event in Manchester, in fact, in the suburbs of Manchester, at a pub called the Ram and Shackle. And this was organised by a young student, and there were some 45, 50 young people there. In fact, the wonderful Anne Power turned up, and for which I was extremely grateful, because that meant that I wasn't the oldest person in the room. But it was wonderful to see so many young people. We were talking a lot more than just fracking, but it was fantastic to see so many young people in one place who are actually still capable of independent thought and are not limited by what they read in the mainstream media.
Well, our generation is definitely more awake than maybe yours was when you were children, because you were kind of taught to not question and things like that. But now it's becoming more common for children and young people to question more, and that's really important.
Well, I certainly hope that that is the case. So I know that you had a special visitor at your school recently. There's somebody here that maybe looked familiar to you.
Yeah. Well, I was walking into school and just saw someone in the corner of my eye, and looked a bit closer, and I wasn't sure. So I showed my friends a photo of what Francis Egan looked like, and some said, yeah, it does look a bit like him. Some said not. So we asked the staff, and they said there was a fracking debate, and that was Francis Egan. So I tried to get in to speak to him, and obviously didn't like that. So they stopped me coming for the new building for the rest of the evening. Put a security guard outside it.
So, well, it would have been wonderful, of course, if you had been able to participate in the discussion. Was this after you'd given your presentation at the Quadrilla Inquiry? It was before?
Yeah.
It was before? Well, I could have understood it if it had been after.
Yeah.
No, they certainly don't want anybody who to come along who's going to question them. Okay, Morgan, stay with us. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to take a look at a promo video for a forthcoming conference. This is the AV7 conference, and then we'll be right back.
The Alternative View Conference presents AV7 Humanity Rising. Speakers include Ian R. Crane, Thomas Sheridan, Patrick Henningsen, Max Egan, Zen Gardner, Dr. Graham Downing, Willem Felderhoff, Field McConnell, Vanessa Beeley, Michael Shrimpton, Fiona Burns. 13th to the 15th of May 2016, Horwood House, near Milton Keynes. Book online at alternativeview.co.uk or call 0207 558 8869. AV7, bringing together some of the most inspirational agents of real change.
Honestly, I've spoken at a lot of gigs, and I'd say this is the best gig that I've spoken at, just because of the lineup of speakers.
And welcome back to part 3 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, I will say that there's about 6.5 weeks to go before AV7, and there are just 30 rooms left at the venue. So if you are thinking of coming along, then please do consider reserving your tickets sooner rather than later. Last year, I think we had something like about 30 people book in the last week. I don't think that's going to happen this time round. So now my guest tonight on Fracking Nightmare is Morgan Marshall, an accomplished musician, but also an activist with the anti-fracking community on the Fylde Peninsula. Now, Morgan, I gather that Francis Egan has just moved the headquarters of Quadrilla into Lancashire, in fact, into Preston, and I saw this in one of the Lancashire papers. And they got Bill Beaumont along to open the offices. Now, Bill Beaumont is from, I think he was even in his prime whilst I was in my teens. Of course, he was a famous English rugby player. Do you think that Bill Beaumont actually has a clue as to what damage this industry is going to do to his home county?
Well, he can't do if he supports them. That's quite simple, but no, most likely not.
Either that or, Quadrilla...
Well, he gets money from it.
Oh, exactly, I was going to say, Quadrilla have gifted him a few stocks to, keep him sweet. Now, this is one of the concerns, isn't it? That, Quadrilla are trying to effectively and they're not the only company, but they're effectively trying to buy their way into the community. Have you had any experience of that?
What, them trying to give me one?
Well, no, I'm sure they haven't. I know they haven't. No, I was talking in terms of within the local community. I mean, they've made contributions to, local youth centres. They've bought kit for football teams. I mean, they seem to have almost an unlimited budget for any community group that needs any kind of funding, in the hope that it will curry favour and reduce the opposition.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, so, in your opinion, what is the likelihood of Quadrilla ever achieving social licence in the Fylde?
Well, they haven't got a social licence, so I don't think they will get one, because we're going to stop them every step of the way. And the further they push us, the further we're going to go as well.
Well, I think that I know you've seen a few of the earlier episodes of Fracking Nightmare. Did you watch the last episode? It wasn't actually last week. I think it was 2 weeks ago. But did you watch the last episode with Helen Bender? Helen is the lady based in southern Queensland whose father sadly committed suicide last October.
Yeah, I did watch that one. Yeah.
I mean, this is the way in which the industry eats into the community, psychologically. Yeah, bullying. Exactly, it is bullying. Have you seen my documentary, Voices from the Gasfields?
I did, yes. Watched it on YouTube. Yeah.
Excellent. I think it's been up on YouTube now for almost 11 months, and I think it's clocked something like about 27,000 views, or that's what YouTube admit to. So even if the YouTube numbers are wrong, I mean, or massaged, then the reality is they can't make people who have seen it not see it. So
yeah,
it's all good. Well, Morgan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for getting in contact with me in the first instance. Great minds think alike, you see, because I was just thinking it would be really good if we could get Morgan Marshall to come on the show. And the next thing I know, I've got a message from you. And, we're exchanging messages, and it's your school holidays. So what are you going to be doing over the next couple of weeks? Because you've got 2 weeks before you go back to school, I think.
Yeah, I've got quite a lot of jazz to be doing, because I've had a few lessons. So I'll be mainly practicing jazz and things like that. And
are you playing any concerts in the local area?
Not this holiday, no.
Anything planned?
In the summer, I'm going to be doing one, the Kite Festival.
Whereabouts is that?
In St Anne's Beach.
Okay, St Anne's Beach. And what are the dates of that?
July the 31st.
Okay, last weekend of July. So there you have it. If you want to see Morgan Marshall in action, you're playing jazz violin there, yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. Remarkable talent, and also you can get up to speed on what he and the other members of the community have been doing in terms of raising awareness against this insidious industry. Well, Morgan, I'm sure that you will be joining us again. And, listen, if there is anything that you think we can help with, either, at Fracking Nightmare or UK Column, in terms of working with young people or getting the word out to young people, we'd love to hear about it. And anything we can do to help, then, you only have to ask.
Yeah.
And thanks very much to your parents. I know they didn't want to join you. They're camera shy, but I can hear them just in the background there. So thanks very much for letting Morgan join me this evening. And good luck with the campaign. I have a very, very nasty feeling that the decision regarding Quadrilla and the Fylde has already been made. In fact, it's my opinion, call me a conspiracy theorist, but it's my opinion that the decision was made before the inquiry even got started. And that decision is that the Lancashire County Council decision to not permit Quadrilla to drill at Rossiter will be upheld, but the decision not to allow them to drill at Preston New Road will probably be overturned. Either way, it's a win-win situation, because if the government, Greg Clark, does uphold the Lancashire County Council decision, wonderful. That's a real result. Anything else will demonstrate that it is basically undermining local democracy.
Some people obviously it won't feel like a big win for them because there's been a lot of stress, but in the bigger picture, you're right, definitely it will.
Oh, of course, it won't be a win for the local community, for sure. But what it will do is it will send massive reverberations around the country. The fact that, the local democracy, the people that are elected by the local community to represent the local community, they have been ridden roughshod over. And, the government basically just says, thank you for letting us know what you think, but we're going to do it anyway. Go on, Morgan, sorry, say again.
That will make a lot of people angry, and like you said, it will go on our side.
Absolutely, and it will be probably, the best thing that could happen in terms of recruiting for the anti-fracking community across the country.
Yeah.
So keep on doing what you're doing, and hey, listen, I think that it's absolutely wonderful. In many ways, it's very sad. In many ways, it's very sad that for our youth to have to be burdened with the horrendous agendas being perpetrated by those who should know better. Yeah. But I believe that collectively we will come through.
Yeah.
So thanks very much, and we will most definitely speak again. Don't go away because we're going to speak after the show anyway. Well, that's it for me tonight. And, keep an eye on what's occurring both in the Fylde, in North Yorkshire and East Yorkshire, and in your own area. We have 5 or 6 months before the Mother-Frackers get their bits in the ground anywhere else. Let's use that time to raise awareness and make sure that they know very well that they are not going to be welcomed anywhere in this country. Thanks very much and good night.